Hello everyone, I am Alexa Donne, and today I am giving you a sneak peek behind the scenes look at pure author panic. It is July 1st, which is the beginning of Camp NaNoWriMo, which is the perfect excuse to kick myself in the pants and start drafting. This isn't just any draft for me, but the first book I'm going to be drafting on contract. So that means I signed a piece of paper promising a publisher that I would write a book and deliver it on a deadline and that it would be really good. And I am pretty nervous. I've heard from a lot of friends that the second book you have to write on contract is the hardest book that you're ever going to write because it's the first one with that pressure behind it, the deadline, the contract, the money. I don't get paid the rest of my advance unless I produce a book that the publisher finds satisfactory. I am pretty confident that I can write another book. I wrote 2 before the one that I sold, so I'm clearly capable of writing novels. But it's the first time I'm going to have to write to a certain directive. I had my pitch approved by my editor, and I need to develop it and stick to it because it has to fit into my brand and my world, and the readers who read the first book would theoretically want to pick up the second one, which of course reminds me the terror that real readers are going to be able to pick up my book and they're going to finish it with expectations and that they might want to read another one. So I'm a little nervous. I also mentioned in previous videos how quickly I wrote my debut, Brightly Burning. I finished that puppy in 3 months flat. I started during NaNoWriMo 2015 and I wrote every single day for 3 months and finished it in February 2016. It is the fastest I have ever written a book, so this book is going to be a real test of whether I can replicate that kind of magic. I don't have quite as tight a deadline on this project as 3 months, but I'd like to push myself to see if I can replicate that kind of writing speed. If not 3 months, 6 months, because my previous projects took at least a year. And I know in the future, if I want to be a serious writer who's working with publishers, I'm gonna have to learn to produce a book in 6 months or less. You may also know from my other videos that I am a hardcore pantser, which means I fly by the seat of my pants when I'm writing. I really enjoy this writing process, but it doubles the tension in terms of can I do this again, because I'm flying by night, making things up as I go along, and who knows what book is going to come out at the end of it. I wanted to film this video to give you a look into the real behind the scenes writing process that a writer on contract might be experiencing. This is day 1, July 1, the first day of Camp NaNoWriMo, and I am determined to start drafting. It doesn't matter whether you have a book deal. Writing books, it's hard and it's scary, and starting a new draft and especially trying to do a timed writing activity is really scary. So here are my plans for the month. I'm going to start today, and luckily just last night I had a total brainwave about my first scene. Typically, I can't start writing a book until the first line of the first scene of the first chapter materializes like magic in my brain, and once that line comes to me, I tend to get the momentum. But if I can't figure out how to start, I can't start. And I'll tell you, before I came up with the idea that I'm actually going to be drafting, I had been working on another one, but I just couldn't figure out where the heck the book was going to start, which meant I didn't work on it. I spent the last 6 weeks kind of thinking and brainstorming and biding my time. So it's a huge relief that I actually know where I'm going to start. So I'm going to do that today. I already opened a Scrivener file, which means I have to do it, right? Like Scrivener makes it real. I don't know how many words I'm going to write today, and I'm not holding myself to quite as strict a word count deadline as a typical NaNoWriMo. In Camp NaNoWriMo, you can set flexible goals, so it's really up to you. So unlike NaNoWriMo in November, I am not shooting for 50,000 words this month, though if I write close to that, that would be amazing. I'm shooting for a very realistic 20,000 words. When I'm not doing daily writing and word sprints and hitting a NaNoWriMo level word count, 20K tends to be my average for a month in which I am seriously drafting. So I'm not pushing myself extra hard, but I am pushing myself into my comfortable writing zone. I just need to get back into writing mode. I haven't worked on a fresh story since last November when I did some semi-serious nanoing on a fantasy project. I haven't actively drafted a fresh project since I wrote Brightly Burning, which was a year and a half ago, so I feel a little rusty. I have worked on books since then, and I have written material. I've done revisions on Brightly Burning, and that includes writing fresh scenes, fresh chapters, scrapping things, and working in new things. But a fresh draft from scratch, especially as a pantser, is a different mindset, and is something I really have to throw myself into, like jumping off a cliff. I'm part of a cabin of writers, and it seems like everyone is drafting this July, and that's the good thing. I know at least 10 to 15 people who plan on drafting this month, so I feel like I have tons of moral support in the community, and I plan on relying on that pretty heavily. I have people I'm going to be checking in with, we're going to be comparing goals, giving each other pep talks, and I'm really excited because Susan Dennard, who is one of my favorite people on the planet, has recently started doing word sprints again on Twitter. Susan did these word sprints a few years ago when I happened to be working on my first ever novel, and it was Susan's Misfits and Daydreamers community word sprints that got me through that draft. I feel it's kismet that Susan just started doing them again now that I'm working on my fourth book, my second book on contract, and the first book that I have to write for somebody else. The stakes feel higher now that I'm writing on contract, and I'm sure I'm going to have tons more feelings and insights for you as I go through this process. I am thankful for one thing, and that's that I am not writing a sequel or a second book in a trilogy. I think those come with a special pressure, and I've watched friends write the dreaded second book, and I have nothing but sympathy for them, and I'm a little glad that I am not in that boat. That said, I am writing a spiritual sequel to my debut novel. So Brightly Burning is a sci-fi that's set in space with spaceships orbiting Earth, and I plan on setting this book, which is also a classic romance retelling, in the same universe. So there is going to be continuity, but it's not a direct sequel. So I hope you'll join me as I angst through this second draft. And if you're actively drafting, let's cheer each other on. Drop a comment below, let me know what you're working on, what tips and tricks and methods that you're using to push through your draft. I hope the next time I film a video about this draft, which I'm gonna have to come up with some really cutesy nickname for so that we can talk about it, I have good news to report. But who knows, maybe the next time we talk, I'm going to be pulling my hair out and talking about writer's block or saying I haven't worked on it in a week, but I'm gonna remain some optimism and say that I can do this. The good thing is, I have developed some writing habits and I just have to flip that switch and get back into that mode. Happy drafting from me, a slightly panicked writer, to you, hopefully a more calm writer, and good luck to us all.